Hello, everyone out there. My name is Stephen Slaughter. I'm a professor of architecture in the School of Architecture and Interior Design in the College of Design, Architecture, Art, and Planning. And I think I was asked to be a part of this with my relationship with King Records, which I hope in the preceding conversation I'll be able to expand on greater. So what we just saw was Summer of Soul, or When the Revolution Could Not Be Televised, a documentary by Questlove of the Roots Crew, a feature documentary about the legendary 1969 Harlem Cultural Festival, which celebrated African American music and culture and promoted Black pride and unity. And I would add to that, in a date, 1969, after the assassination of both Robert Kennedy and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so I was moved by both the performance and the information that the documentary presented about that time in history and its relevance to the things that are happening in culture today, both with Black artists and Black and Brown people in this country and throughout the world. And I am joined today and want to introduce our panelists. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves after I sort of go through the list of people that'll be both providing the response on this very powerful piece that we just witnessed and saw, and initiating a conversation around, again, its relevance as an artist, as a creator, as a maker, as a person of color in the culture today. And so joining us is Naimah Bilal, sorry, Kickley, Kristy Swift, Mike Wade, and Yemi Oyediran. And I hope I pronounced that right, Yemi. Did I get that right? Because I always get it wrong. Awesome. And if you guys can, I guess, introduce yourselves to the audience, tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then after everyone introduces themselves, if we can sort of get your response or reaction to what you just witnessed, that would be great. So, Naimah.
Thanks so much, Stephen. I'm on fire. Lots of emotions. I'm Naimah Bilal, so glad to be with each of you. I can't wait to hear everybody's reactions. I'm a Cincinnati resident. I rep UC all day as an alum of the UC Foundation and current student, I should add, at the Linder College of Business, doing an online MBA. So yeah, very happy to be here. In my daytime, I get to fundraise for a national organization called the Children's Literacy Initiative as the Chief Development Officer. But at my heart of hearts, I'm a music lover. I grew up on hip hop, R&B, and soul, and so this is an extraordinary experience.
Awesome. Kick.
That was a great intro, Naimah. I am Kickley, founder and executive director of the Cincinnati Music Accelerator, as well as a music producer and composer, composing music for a lot of different brands worldwide. I am as well on fire about this particular film. I have a lot to process, a lot to say, a lot to research, and I'm excited to just be with all of these panelists and talk to the attendees as well about just everything that we've just witnessed and saw. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome, thank you. Dr. Kristy Swift.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much, Stephen, DAAP panelists, and everybody here this evening. So I'm Kristy Swift, and I'm very excited and thankful, really thankful to be included because I want to learn about the 1969 Harlem Cultural Festival, and I really want to hear your responses to this film. I teach classes at UC, CCM, and protest music, Black opera, Sing Cincinnati, and music and disability. And central to all of these is uncovering and reclaiming silenced and muted voices. you know, in music history, we tell stories about musicians and their musics in many mediums. So textbooks, music scores, oral history, sound maps, recordings, and also films. And to me, Summer of Soul is a music history. It's a music history. It's not just a documentary or a concert film, although I don't have any idea, obviously, how Amir Thompson would feel about that label. But he's done exactly what we do, which is locate sources, study them in depth, and then construct a story about the choices, the identities, and the values of the people who created, performed, paid for, and heard this music. So I'm really looking forward to what everybody has to say. Thanks.
Great. And Brother Mike Wade.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Wade. I'm a trumpet artist, and I am originally born and raised in Washington, D.C. Central State University brought me to Ohio, and the University of Cincinnati Conservatory of Music brought me to Cincinnati. I was working on a master's degree there, and I am currently touring with Cameo, the R&B supergroup, on the road. That's kind of my main stuff, and on the road at times with a group called the Odyssey Jazz Collective. And I have a few groups of my own here playing around town. I'm a composer and recording artist and teacher, father. And it is such a thrill, very honored to be here, and I can't wait to get the discussion on.
Well, word up. And last like Cameos close to my heart. I mean, like one of the bands that made my feeling about myself being weird right. And Yemi.
What's going on, everyone? My name is Yemi Oyediran. I'm a musician. I'm also an educator. I teach at UC. I'm actually a graduate student. I'm working on a doctorate in computer science. I've been in that program since the beginning of time, it feels like. I'm also a jazz musician. I play in various venues. I play at Ghost Baby on Fridays, for example. I'm also a filmmaker as well. I've done work around King Records as I've coordinated with my man Steven on a couple of things. But I like to wear different hats, and this is kind of an intersection of multiple of those hats together. So I'm really excited to talk about a lot of this music. There's some interesting cast and characters and figures that I haven't seen in a while that appear in the film. There's a couple of things of importance that I think that it would be nice to discuss that occurred during the film, just different perspectives on African American history. So I'm looking forward to really digging into the really beautiful details of this amazing culture.
And I hope the conversation allows for that, because there's so much to unpack, like what it was for me as a fan of the music, as a student of the music, a student of the music, in that it sort of shaped my life. Like, it was the records that my mother and father had. It was my introduction to Black culture. For example, like when I was a little kid, as an only kid, there's a call and response at family gatherings that my mother would initiate, where she would say it loud. And there's a little 3-4-year-old with a big afro in the 70s. I used to scream out as loud as I could, "I'm Black and I'm proud." And that's one of the things, and one of the takeaways I had when I watched this movie, being transported back to my youth. These are the artists that I grew up with. These are the artists that sort of situated my taste. Sly and the Family Stone, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Stevie Wonder and his artistry, moving from young Stevie to the genius that he was. And I was impressed to see that genius on display in the movie. And and the documentary and all the things that it touched on relative to how this moment in time in Harlem became a touchstone to so many issues that was happening in culture at the time with our Blackness, moving from being able to use the term or being understood by a kind of antiquated term that describes a people Negro with one that we own ourselves in being Black. And that being a kind of central theme of the movie, as we understand the kind of bridge that it represented from one era, both in the civil rights movement, both in music, from the suits of the Pips to the costumes of Sly Stone. I mean, all of that was encapsulated in this film, and it's hard for me to get my heart out of it when we say on fire. Like it was both excitement and pride and joy unrestrained with Mahalia. I can't talk. Like it was both moving and emotional and filling at the same time. That's what it was for me. And there's so much to talk about with this piece of work, with this documentary, with this encapsulation of a time of transition. And I hope we have the opportunity to sort of touch on everything, both from the music as a fan to its time and place in history as a person of color in these United States today. And so I want to, I guess, begin with everyone's reaction to the documentary, how you think about it through the lens of both the music and what it represented and the time in Black history and what that represented and how it's such a nexus of both. So Naimah, if you want to begin. I'm just going through the order.
So to experience this documentary is to experience like the oral topography of my childhood. So you talked about Sister Mahalia Jackson, and to see her brought me back to my Big Mama in the South. Your grandma is called Big Mama. And Big Mama is the matriarch of the family. She is the orienting guide, spirit guide, snatch your edge guide. She will gather you up when you're doing wrong. That was Big Mama. Every morning when I lived in Mississippi with Big Mama, she would wake us up on Sunday morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. She would make scrapple, bacon, eggs, and grits. And she would have Mahalia Jackson blasting. And so to see her and hear her and feel the way my Big Mama at 5 o'clock in the morning would feel the spirit of God, when we're just trying to wipe the sleep from our eyes, it brought tears to my eyes and it made me miss my Big Mama. So, my reaction is a personal one to understand that Summer of Soul was an historic journey, intergenerational, interspiritual, intermusical journey of the African diaspora. Hugh Masekela's presence to me made that very clear. So we completed the link. Barack Obama talked about years ago how Black music is essentially the stem cell of all American music, and it's true. Even when we think about, what we consider bluegrass, which is so close to us here in the Ohio River Valley, the banjo was the kora, which is a Malian instrument, so every aspect of American roots music, again, is a stem cell from Black folks. So to see Hugh Masekela on stage made it this like visceral full circle thing. And to hear and see the audience move and clap and dance in a way, it's just like the kinesthetic memory that Black folk have when we hear that beat and we hear that music. It is insane. It's, you can't resist. So for me, it was a sobering moment. And I feel like that same concert could have happened yesterday and it still have felt so palpable and so real. And then I link it to, well, what does this mean? What is viewing this point in time mean in 2021 in Cincinnati? And I think later we'll get into some of the connective tissue through the decades of Black music in America, its commodification,
Yeah.
and its brilliance.
Meaning, kick. What does it mean to you?
I can't actually give it an actual meaning right now. I'm still processing it. For someone that literally lives, breathes, sleeps, eats, cries music every single day of my life, even when I'm come home, it does mean so much to me to just see that. I mean, how it started and just seeing Stevie Wonder just lose it on the drums. Like, what?
Yeah.
That was the best intro I've seen to a music documentary in my entire life. And how it, oh man, I mean, just again, I'm still processing it, but just seeing all these legendary people, and not even just, the musicians themselves, watching the crowd, the audience, and their facial reactions, how happy they are seeing the sea of Blackness, and just all the different outfits, the different eras, the young, the old, the new, just all blended into one. I mean, man, it was like my brain was in a psychedelic explosion just watching it all. And really, I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch this, but I literally was up in front of it as it started and the music
Yeah.
started. And to be honest, I didn't know what to expect of this. But yeah, it's very powerful. And again, like I had mentioned before, I've got a lot of research myself to do. And it does bother me a lot to see that this is the first time, when it was released, but this is the first time it's been brought to our attention visually through video, and that it was documented so well. I know there's a lot more to that whole documentary. I'm sure there's like, with you, like hours of footage that had not been used, and I want to see that footage. So I'll leave it brief at that, but hopefully I have an answer by the time we wrap this up.
Yeah. Kristy.
Thanks for those comments, Kick. I agree with you. I want to see all that footage too, and I just wonder if somehow that's going to come out now. I mean, the thing is, to pull back a little bit from the film, music takes up space, just like my voice is taking up space right now, something I'm hyper aware of. Music is not neutral, and it doesn't exist in this vacuum, and it's not a universal language. I mean, it all has these deep cultural and gender and national, political, racial, sexual, all the things, markers that create and represent identities. And so whose music is heard and how it's heard and who has access to it reflects, of course, at least in my mind, who has power. So although all of us shared this experience of music just now, watching this film, A Beautiful Thing, we all come to it from such different places, from such different experiences in different ways. And that's also a beautiful thing. But Questlove's story to me is different from so many others that I know about through narrated music histories. Black musicians that are positioned as artists as binaries, either hypervisible or invisible, contextualized as Black trauma porn, or overcoming. But this narrative arc with that beginning, like you mentioned with the 19-year-old Stevie Wonder playing the drums, the middle of the story of this arc is Mavis Staples and Mahalia Jackson singing Precious Lord, Take My Hand, and then that fantastic ending with Nina Simone singing Are You Ready, Black People? And then Sly, right? And then Sly and Family Stone and the festival goers on Want to Take You Higher. I mean, that's a big story arc, and it reveals how music can be transformational. And what, of course, here's the thing, I have some questions. So how was it silenced for 52 years? I think we have a lot of answers to that, right? How are we shocked that none of the musicians, none of the producers, none of the attendees were ever given any access to spaces in which to promote this giant festival? Or are we underwhelmed by yet another example of Black erasure? And to help promote a culture of listening, I'm going to mute myself now. So thanks.
Okay. No, I think all the things that you're touching on is, and I hope we get a chance to unpack it. This documentary reveals so much about power, erasure. I'll leave it right there. Mike, what were your thoughts? I mean, we have there's so much to kind of dig into. I want to get everyone's response out first before we start the conversation. Mike.
One thing that stands out was looking at the footage and if I'm not mistaken, timeline wise, seeing Stevie Wonder and hearing him perform the repertoire that he performed, and I started thinking. I said, I think this was long before he got his hits because of what he was presenting musically. So I am right to say that, right? That was long before his hits, right? Is that correct? Someone?
Yeah.
Well, little Stevie Wonder had hits, and so this was
No.
on
What
the
I
cusp.
mean, like that was long before the songs, the Key of Life.
Yeah, it was long before. That's long before the second generation of his career.
Now you're with me. You dig what I'm saying? I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm looking at this, and I'm like, yeah, this is very early. I was surprised of that because you didn't know. For one, you kind of either know or don't know who was going to be in the movie. I'd seen some previews of it. I saw the clips of Gladys Knight and the Pips. They were absolutely phenomenal. Just goes to show you. That reminded me of the stories, the Motown stories, and just how hard they worked on the appearance and the steps, and just the whole showmanship. And the people that were around them, making sure were available to them to, if they wanted to be great, show people that they had the people around you that want to take advantage of it. And then some of what you saw, the result is kind of what you saw through the three Pips. They were outstanding. The way they were in sync, I was just totally blown away with that. As far as Sly and the Family Stone, I remember about 2 years ago, we was on a ship and I saw him for the first time live. It was the Soul Train cruise. I was on there with Cameo, and that was, I think, the female trumpeter. She had just passed because I think that was a recent death that has taken place from her. God rest her soul. But it was great to see her in the footage and hear her play, and then to see all the many roles, and like Yemi said earlier, hats. She wore a lot of different hats, and you can see display of that, the way she was jumping off the mic, she was singing, she was rapping, she was motivating background and playing the trumpet. And definitely been in her shoes where you're on the mic and you got to pop off and get a horn line in, and you got to pop back on and get on the mic and jump back on the mic. So the whole one thing I was extremely impressed with was the way that the filmmakers and the producers put it together and was able to say so much of everything that was taking place, like the insight of the was it Ruffin? Was his first name? David? Is it David Ruffin? Is that correct?
That's David Ruff.
Sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was very you know, the insight that he had just left, you know, the group, and kind of being able to see him perform live, you know, away from the group. That was very intriguing. So yeah, very powerful movie. Very lot of great footage of the live performances. And just the whole aspect, the way that the orchestra was mainly in big band style, that accompanied a lot of the acts, the main acts. Yeah, so just an honor to see it today, and glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Yemi.
Yeah, so I had a lot. There's a lot of takeaways I had from the film. I think that I would see the film in kind of three different segments. It's a discourse on African American history. It's a discourse on African American musical and cultural history, and then it's also a discourse on the current plight of African American people today. One of the things I was really struck by is how much of the narrative hasn't changed. It quickly kind of reminded me of how much of the things that what we call the progressive movement today begins in this era. It begins with the African American people discussing these things. When you see Jesse Jackson on there discussing healthcare, these are things that the Black Panthers were talking about, and they bring up the you see the Black Panthers before what's his face was killed in Chicago. Can somebody help me out?
Oh,
Freddie Hampton.
Freddie Hampton, thank you so much. You see these figures looming large. You see the Black Panthers are the one who provided security. You understand the danger of organized Black people in this situation, of how it's a threat. It gives you kind of an understanding of where that is, and then it also starts to give you an understanding of what happened to Black African Americans in the 80s. It gives you kind of the beginning of the heroin epidemic, which leads to the crack epidemic. And now I kind of see what you're now seeing, a resurgence of Black America, and we're coming back to the themes that we were talking about in 1969. So you see a complete arc of African American history from like Questlove gives kind of an opening and a pathway to understand where we were, where we went, and then where we are now. So it's kind of this like very interesting discourse through African American history, but then musically, we're capturing, as everybody keeps coming back to, Gladys Knight and the Pips. That's like early Gladys Knight and the Pips. So that's heard it through the grapevine. And that would have been the hit. So I don't think Marvin Gaye had recorded it first, but they hadn't released it at that point. And so I think that you capture all these artists in these like really interesting time. You capture Nina Simone in a time in her career where she's still very much regarded highly, before her mental health starts to take a real heavy toll on her career. You capture, as Mike was saying, you capture Stevie Wonder kind of in this in-between phase of his career. This is the beginning of Stevie Wonder's activism, because his career definitely makes a left turn at this point where he becomes significantly more activist. And you see him leading, they kind of lead us to Stevie Wonder's work around making Martin Luther King Day a federal holiday. We get an understanding of this change that's happening in Black America and how all of these artists are responding. Along this same time, we're hearing different things from boxers. We're hearing every prominent person in Black America is speaking about all of these issues in unity. They're talking about the same things. They're talking about the same solutions. They identify the same problems. They identify the same solutions. And it's this really like kind of golden era that we forget about. But one of the reasons why, when you watch this film, you really see how much of a threat that is to a dominant culture. When you have that many people show up to an event And you don't hear any of the drama. You don't hear any of the crazy things, not extreme amount of drug use like you heard at Woodstock. You know, this was just people enjoying music and culture without anything bad happening, you know? And one of the reasons why it's not significant is because nothing bad happened. Only positive, only good, beautiful things happened. And that's another discourse on the way that we keep African-American history. If it's bad, we're going to hold on to it. If it's great, not so much, as we see with this film. And I think one of the reasons why this film didn't really go anywhere is because there's not an interest. There's not really any interest in capturing just some singular event. All of these artists are captured everywhere else. Why does anybody want to see this? And there's kind of always a blasé attitude towards African-American history. And again, this film really encompasses a lot of issues and does it really nicely, really succinctly, keeps the narrative really nice and focused. It's excellently done and really opens a lot for a wonderful conversation. And I'll pass it on. I know I've just thrown out about like 20 million things. I have 50 more in my head that I could go on to, but I'm not going to yet.
No, I sympathize because my head, the things that's happening in my head is happening quicker than my ability to articulate them, and to sort of rest or kind of land on any one thing at any one time. But I'll go back to, and this is a good segue to the first question. It speaks to the reason of the erasure. Like when I watched the film, I kind of felt like. This is going to sound cliche. I felt like kind of I was being kind of shaken up, like awoken, like literally, like what? Wait, I remember that there was a Black Panthers. I remember that Jesse Jackson was a prominent person in culture and politics. I remember that there were these organizations that were dealing with both economic and social issues, and there was that part of music was about a type of activism and a kind of cultural awareness, an awareness of self, an awareness of Blackness, and that being a forward thing with when you went to events, not just the communal, but also there are opportunities to sort of hear that there are these organizations, there are these people, there are these things that's going on that's about uplifting, supporting, and dealing with our condition as a people organized. And I forgot. I mean, like I literally forgot. It was the history that I grew up with. It's the thing that it's the community that I grew up in. It's the music that I was listening to. And then 52 years later, I'm just like, wait a minute. Like what happened? Where are these voices now? Where is this urgency now? Or where is this organization now? It exists, but the movie and the history and the erasure, the kind of continuity of Black consciousness, and when you look at the movie and you realize that the things that they're talking about, the things that they're dealing with, both as musicians and artists and people, are the things that we're trying to get back to, the things that we're trying to strive for today. It was enlightening and frustrating and maddening at the same time. And so the first question is about that type of erasure. Like what, I guess, Kristy, you spoke on the kinds of power structures that allowed this erasure to take place. And Yemi, you talked about maybe it was a kind of, and I don't want to I'll paraphrase, maybe something that had to do with the marketplace, maybe something that had to do with kind of need or desire or wants for this music to be both understood as a history and present through history and a continuity of what that time with this and what that event, the series of events in Harlem represented. And I was wondering if we could speak to that erasure, what it means, or your speculation on what that could be, and what that meant to you. For me, it was a kind of an awakening, a kind of shaking, like, remember the past, remember the organization, remember the institutions, remember the things that made, that remember the struggle and where that struggle was in 1969, and understand your struggle today. I'm wondering if anyone could speak to your thoughts of Black erasure, like why it took 52 years for something like this to come out in culture.
Well, so when you say Black erasure, you know what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking about like the very like erasure of Black life.
Yeah.
So to me, this documentary is as much a journey through like the musical richness of Black culture at that time, and also set us on this journey to help us understand how music has always been a source of agitation. It's been a source of coding and safety. When enslaved people escaped, they used hymns, they used Black spirituals to tell each other where to go. So embedded in our musical practice has always been resistance, has always been a seeking of liberation. But wait, hold on. When I think about, that's my baby girl in the back. When I think about erasure, I'm thinking about the literal erasure of Black life, not only in the millions of slaves who were killed in that evil enterprise of chattel slavery, but I'm trying to, wasn't that long ago that it was the norm for Black civil rights leaders to be erased by assassination. And so one thing that is just so viscerally painful is, and I'm not going to use the word resilience, because when I hear the resilience of Black people, I heard someone say this the other day, it's like, when you tell someone that you're very resilient, it means they can take a licking and keep on ticking. So I'm not going to say that this musical display, this artistic display represents Black resilience. What it represents is protest. It's like, we're here in spite of Dr. Martin Luther King having been assassinated, because Malcolm X was taken from us, because of this whole litany of Black leaders having been killed by, systematically killed by a system of white supremacy and racism. We're still here and we're still creating art because of. And so when I think of erasure, the art to me is but a secondary layer of the bigger erasure of Black bodies.
I want to chime in as well, on the question of why did it take so long for this to come to light? And as I think more about it, it makes perfect sense. Like, look how many people showed up. What did it say, 330,000? If I'm getting that number correct. But at least 300K showed up for one thing, music. Especially in a time when there's so much racial injustice, just so much hate towards Black people. And the number one thing that unites us really is music. We can debate and we can argue, but we can agree that music makes us feel good. And for the masses to see that, I promise they were like, we cannot use this. We cannot televise this revolution. We cannot show the world, Black people around the world, that all you need to do to unite as one is play music. So many people talked about, and just through my life in general, how powerful music has been, how it brought them together. Naimah, you spoke about, your grandmother and just your music, just getting up and seeing how wonderful it felt. It made people feel. I'm a strong advocate and promoter of saying, we all have that one song that we can listen to right now when we're feeling down. When someone's pissed us off, when we've gone through a breakup, when that check hits and then all of a sudden bills come in swinging and taking it away, you go to that one song and you're like, all right, I got this. And you turn it up loud, especially with the 808s to hit all the subs, the low ends just hitting. It makes you feel so good. And again, as I think more and more about it, that's what I feel is the reason that this was not put out there. And I feel like it's so much more significant now that it's now out there to the general public, to the masses, about this event that took place, because the world has changed. And that literally is clear proof that that is what we need to unite as one. And I feel like there's so much more in there. Like, I mean, I guess I'll touch on it. The fifth dimension. When they talked about how they did not feel welcome or loved by their own people, that hit me hard because I went through that as well. I'm a music producer, and usually even my clients, a lot of them still to this day, I think I primarily produce rap, urban, hip hop music, not knowing that I can compose other genres that aren't typical to the Black culture. And they say, wow, you made this. Like, yeah, I made this. Like, oh, that's your thing. Like, yeah, that's my thing. Well, can you do this? Yeah, I could do that. And to hear them talk about that and the music and how they were in the middle of it all, that struck me. But the fact that they felt so, they like, we had to be here at this festival. We had to show our side. We had to show that we are for our people. That was huge. That was huge. So, long story long, I really feel like that is the reason that this was not televised until now.
If I kind of follow up with that too, I also think that there's complications of why it hasn't been televised we don't take into account today any longer. One is film production has become significantly cheaper. And then there's significantly more outlets for film production than there were before. I mean, if you thought about it before, your options are going to be public television. Definitely not I mean, like cable wasn't going to be there. You weren't going to have outlets in the big three. And then film outlets weren't easy to, I mean, those pathways, look at Spike Lee. Getting into the film business is still a challenge for Spike Lee, and he's been doing this for well over 40 years. So I think the pathways for being able to do film and produce film wasn't really there. And the desire to invest into it, and also the audience to even be interested in it. Then I also think that there's kind of a narrative of Black America that this, as Kik was touching on, that this does not promote, that is more attractive. When you have something with the Black Panthers and it shows the Black Panthers as violent, I'm all for that. If you show me the Black Panthers are doing something good for their neighborhood, not so much. And which is what Kik was touching on. It shows African Americans in a light that doesn't follow along the central casting. But that's also what makes this particularly so beautiful, is that it shows we've all kind of talked, Naimah touched about this, the homogeny of Black peoples, the diaspora. You're seeing Latin American music, you're seeing African music, you're seeing the different flavors of Black music, you're seeing the full spectrum of the Black peoples being represented in America culturally in one event. That's amazing. That's not something that happened all over the place. And that doesn't necessarily fit a story that people are trying to tell. When you're hearing a positive story about Fred Hampton, people speaking positively about Fred Hampton, that doesn't work with the script, the American narrative that has been given to us. And the very fact that this doesn't fit into it is, I think, one element. I don't think it's the only element. I definitely think market is probably the number one reason. But I think market combined with the fact that this puts African Americans in a positive light, which is kind of surprisingly a no-no. I think is a huge part. I think it's a complex reason.
Not surprisingly a no-no. Dr. Swift, Brother Wade, any thoughts?
Yes, I like the way. I think that the most powerful thing about the movie starts and ends with the promoter that promoted the show, because the promoter was smart enough And at that time, he didn't have to go far. And the truth, and the movie tells the truth. I think that's another thing that why it, you know, was kind of maybe a hidden treasure, or became a hidden treasure, because it told the truth. And the promoter told the truth. And for the promoter, it was families that were living together in Harlem, musicians that were living at Harlem. And the movie captured 6, 8 to maybe 10 different types of music art form: Latin jazz, traditional jazz, blues, B.B. King on there, for God's sake, gospel. It's just several different styles that for the promoter, he was just saying, I'm just gonna pull from the neighborhood here, and it showed many, and it just showed all people, every race you could think about, just mainly, all working together, as they have and do, and on an everyday basis at that point in time in Harlem. And like for Sly and the band that he had together, many different, different types of people coming together, and the fact that they knew their goal, they knew that that's what they were trying to display, and they stayed true to that the whole time as a band, and it's still to this day. And so it was really great to see that, and how effective that is. And I think it's very, very important. I think extremely important that if anything we take away from the movie is we make sure that we take that of how you see a lot of award shows and this type of thing. They're only concentrating on, mainly, it's kind of like, it's like less grouped styles. It's kind of like coming down to what's popular or what sells rather than exposure, which is important there, because art form is always being created. And so if it's being created, it can't be popular, but that doesn't make it non-important. So I think we should take away the fact of how this promoter put together everything that he could think about and everything that was going on, style-wise, stylistic-wise, and art form-wise, music art form-wise, and knew that it would be great. And so, my hat's off to him.
Thank you. Definitely hats off to the promoter. And we started this question by the theme, I hate that, of Black erasure. Dr. Swift, if you had mentioned it, and you had mentioned sort of like unpacking that. I was wondering where you land on that topic.
Thanks. I'm just going to be really quick. Please call me Kristy, by the way. I'm sorry I didn't say that sooner. I keep looking around going, no, that's good. I'm just thinking about a couple things actually that Naimah said, and then also that Kik said. And so Rhiannon Giddens comes to mind with what you were saying, Naimah, about not just Black erasure in the arts, but Black erasure of the Black body itself, right? And I don't mean to turn this into trauma porn and that, but I just want to mention her at the purchaser's option, right? I'm sure you guys have all seen her performance of that. She's sung that a lot with that banjo, that historical instrument that she has. And she found in a book an advertisement. Well, you go listen to it. I'm not going to go into that. But my point is, it's about the body and also the artistic erasure. That's one of the best examples I know about that. And then just really quickly, Nina Simone, with what Kik was saying, we do this weird thing, and sometimes, or at least we used to in academia, where we go, okay, we're going to study popular music or we're going to study classical music. I mean, that still exists some places, but Nina Simone is a great example, I think, also of, similar to you, kick in that, she was a classical pianist. And she went to Juilliard. She applied to the Curtis Institute of Music. She was turned down. She said why she was turned down. We know why she was turned down. But if I'm not mistaken, near the end of her life, they gave her a degree, an honorary degree. And she talked about that and said, I can't play cocktail music. I can't play that music because my family thinks it's the devil's music, and I can't do that. I can't go there. And so she really, I think, wanted to be a concert pianist. But then, of course, Mississippi Goddamn, that completely changed, which is why we see her now, singing in this example from the festival. So cultural listening, I'm gonna mute myself.
I think Nina's super powerful. What we see from Nina, when she's talking about she's going to give white people the blues, and it's a blues. I mean, that's meta on so many different levels. I mean, it's absolute genius. You're seeing absolute genius. And Nina was also on Bethlehem, which at the time was owned by King Records. So she was on the King Record label.
Oh, really?
And I have some letters that someone gave me that shows how they did not get along like at all. She was always authentic, and it clashed, and it caused her career difficulties at every stage of her career, every record label, until I think at some point in time she started self-producing her own music. But Nina had always had troubles because she was outspoken. She was always authentic. And you hear the authenticity in her. You hear the reflection of African-American culture at its heart. When you see what she's doing at the end, that's kind of right there. You start seeing the beginnings of African-Americans messing around with the griot style / hip hop. You're starting to see the roots in all of these things. But it's just kind of the thing that strikes me about Nina is you see the future and you see the past in one singular person. She was able to capture both of those things, both in the topic and both in her approach and in her style as a musician. She's just absolutely incredible.
Okay, I wanted to get this question in, and I hope that everyone's able to stick around. It was kind of distilled from a conversation we had the other day. How can we look at the talent and productivity of the Black artists featured in the documentary Black Artists, by the way, who 50 years ago had to endure sundown towns touring through the segregated South, discriminatory business practice on top of misogyny and racism that was endemic of the era, to pay forward their struggle to transcend their art into a sustainable financial model, and imagine a contemporary model where Black cultural innovation dismantles Black cultural appropriation for the benefit of Black artists. And I cite here, and I think this has been on the news recently, the Black TikTok creators strike to protest the lack of credit for their work. And so I wanted to speak about that, like Black productivity, the model that they set in that era, the struggles that they had to endure in that era, and the struggles that we as Black creators, we as Black artists have to endure now to make that model sustainable for us, even at a financial level. So if anyone wants to run with that, I wanted to bring that up for discussion.
So I'll touch lightly on it.
Touch it hard, my brother.
So the whole TikTok thing, man, it took my niece told me about it, and I understood it, but I wanted to understand it from, she's 17. I wanted to understand it from her age bracket's perspective, and the way she articulated, because I wanted to see if she knew if this was just something that they were just like, you're stealing our stuff, quit doing that. She articulated it so well. She said, man, she's like, white people are really just taking our stuff. And then she's like, that's just not fair. We work really hard to come up with this choreography. She was just throwing words out. I'm just like, I need to have a talk with your school. You're doing their job, because I love how you articulate it. But I face that a lot in what I do. Musically, of course, I actually deal with a lot of copyright infringements, and I don't talk about it publicly, but a lot of my infringements actually come from predominantly white individuals. And it's crazy. It's like, wow, okay, you know, but also through my ideas as well as I've done through my own organization, that's happened a lot. You know, I've had meetings, I had conversations, and I'm just like, kind of to myself, like, where did you get that idea from? And they say, oh, well, such and such had told me about it. So I was like, you know, I'm going to do it. Well, I thought about this. I get a lot of that. And it's very annoying. It is very annoying. You know, we work hard as a culture, as Black people, to come up with the ideas we've come up with, and to see that taken away and like no credit for it. It's rude. It's utterly just rude. And I actually have been more vocal about that. And I'm tapping more into my Blackness too, but I'm very happy that I'm saying, like, you know, I am very offended that you would do that and not one, have a conversation with me. You know, you just take it and go with it. And I always get that, well, you know, no, that wasn't the intentions. They sit up, you're like, let me explain. No. Now, that's not to say in some cases there have been those who've done things, said things, tried to change things around with, at least in my sector, and you can tell that they actually genuinely, that wasn't their genuine intention. They were literally just ignorant to the thought to say, my bad, like, you're right, that is what that is. And it's like, wow, it's kind of like with the world being more, especially with the protests and all the riots that have happened, people finally say, wow, that the whole time I've actually been racist. And I did not know. And apologize for it genuinely. You know, I think that's something as a Black culture too, is we get so angry at just the wrongdoing. We don't actually take the time to have a conversation to get to the root within that individual, because I don't feel like every white person is bad. I don't feel like a lot of them do it intentionally. A lot of it I feel is subconscious. And sometimes I actually like to have conversations to figure it out before even wasting my energy of being upset. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, but it is upsetting when white privilege is subconscious. I mean, it's maddening.
It is.
Does anyone want to weigh in on that?
I see Naimah's face.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm listening to, I mean, you've made very, very real like the realness of erasure and the realness of like co-opting creative property. I don't know, I'm suddenly drawn to, like, when I think about Cincinnati and I think about Cincinnati Music Accelerator, I think about Elements, and I think about the incredible musicians in our city, like Mike Wade. We have an incredible richness in this city, and we stand on the shoulders of giants. And I just wonder, like, with the 19 people left, like, is there some call to action to hashtag and starving artists, to use Kick Lee's copywritten hashtag? Is there a call to action where we can not just consume this incredible piece of history, but transmute that consumption into action? Support CMA, support Elements, support Black-led, Black-serving, Black-owned artistic enterprises. And I mean, like, I think about, you talk about isolation from resources. There is we talk about the lingering lineage of impacts of racism. Well, in our own city, we have an ecosystem of arts funding, of which, what they call legacy art forms receive the lion's share, because that's the system. you know? And so what does it mean for a city so richly steeped in Black art to have a small fraction of those dollars actually support Black art making? So it's a call to action. And I think the sooner we can recreate that, the kind of incredible like coalition building that we saw in Summer Soul, where we all come together in support, that would be incredible for our city, because the art is here in spite of the challenges. Creation is happening every day.
True.
There's something.
Kristy. Okay. I just wanted to, because this is probably we're at the time. I wanted to wrap. So I wanted to sort of get everyone a quick kick. What were you about to say? I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna. There's a gentleman, Randall, who actually said something that I feel like is a really good answer in the chat. And he said, what struck me the most was the organic communal dignity and respect for each other in a crowd. It was a crowd of that magnitude. There were no distractions and everyone was fully present and account. And I feel like that's a call to action in itself, because, you know, Nate, to respond to you, Naimah, I feel like we need to be more unified in our organizations, in our craft, and as a Black community. I still feel like there is a divide between a lot of us, and I don't feel like that's intentional at all. I just don't feel like there's a proper platform to put us all in the right room, I'm not even gonna say room for us to have a regular, sustainable conversation and then action as we have these conversations.
Okay, I can queue up a plug for Urban Consulate, but I'll hold on that. I wanted to get Mike, or what happened? Was there hello? Are people still there?
Yes, I'm here.
No. I the screen shifted, and I was just making sure that we're still with
still here.
with.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Things happen virtually. Scared me. Didn't know what to do about it. So, Mike or Kristy, if you want to chime in.
All I see is questions and answer.
Yeah, I did too. I think we just we just keep talking to 17 people. Hopefully they can hear us. If not, we're talking to ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the phrase goes, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Yes, it's all about supporting each other. It's all about, as Kick said, it has to be stages created where you can have all different types of music that's going on around the city and all around Ohio come together, and be able to expose that, and then people learn, you know, from that platform. That's what Apollo was all about. And also in DC was the Howard Theater. So we have that. Memorial Hall would be an excellent place.
Yeah, wait a second. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. It's happening. I'm gonna say it's not happening. It's just happening. It's happening in various places. There's no one place, and that's what the thing about it. I think that's where it was. It has to be one or two places. Once again, Apollo. That it was that one place, and then it was all of the thought of exposing and also giving art form and artists an outlet on that type of incredibly challenging stage and audience. Once again, and it doesn't always have to be, you know, as that the concept, because that was a rough stage. But it should be a thing of definitely criteria and this type of thing, and what is accepted, I guess, and what is not accepted. But I think it should all be welcome. The same thing with, like I said, the Howard Theater, and but we do have stages, and we do have places, and we do have parks, and we do have events. I like the way it's a lot of activity. If you come to Cincinnati and can't hear any music, that's very rare. I did have a situation where a buddy of mine came up a couple months ago, but it was COVID, and places were closed, and he's from New Orleans. When he had finished his concert that he came up here to play, around 6:30, 7 o'clock, and man, he was ready to go, and I was like, man, we ain't got nothing for you. I was like, there's nowhere. I said, I couldn't think of one place. I started calling around, asking people, and
I think that's a good point, especially in COVID. As things are coming back, and as venues are coming back, and as the arts are coming back, this is especially a poignant time to support them, to get out there, figure out what's happening in the city, and then support your local artists, support your local venue. It's a way of supporting the culture in the city for sure. Kristy, and then Yemi, if you guys want to kind of, because we're getting close to wrapping up, and I was just going to maybe have you guys have the last word.
I don't want to have the last word, but since we're kind of plugging some newer groups, I just want to mention really quickly where I'm seeing a lot of transformation, like significant transformation, is with some of the work our students are doing. There's a new group, Hear Us, Hear Them. Please, please, please go check out their website. Hear Us, Hear Them. Black-led ensemble, not just performing music by Black composers, but also they're going to offer conversations, dialogues, educational programs, that sort of thing. They have done a magnificent job with this. And back to what Naimah was saying, where they have gotten the resources for this, I have no idea, but it is amazing. And I really think seeing that kind of transformation, I know I'm just giving one example, but that's significant. I think that's where I see that kind of stuff happening. So
just like them on Facebook. This is very impressive just from looking.
Nice. The things that can happen on web conferences. Yemi, I see your name.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think I have much to add. I think a lot was said. I do think, yeah, we have to find ways of being able to see that type of unity that we see in this film, in the Harlem Festival. Is very rare to see in African American populations or in Black diaspora. And as we're beginning to kind of see, as I kind of see this to be kind of an arc, that we're coming back on this arc that we saw in '69 culturally. One of the things that I'm looking forward to see, we have this unified identity of white identity, and it didn't used to be this way. In '69, you were Irish, you were Italian, you were what you were. There wasn't this homogenous idea of white. And as that is developed, I'm really interested to see, are we going to develop this homogenous idea of Blackness? When you hear of, in the film, they talked about the idea of Black, the Negro died, so and Black was born. I think we're finally going to see the full growth. We've seen kind of like, Black in the teenage years. I now think we're seeing Black into adulthood. And I'm very curious to see, and I'm very hopeful to see that idea of Blackness starts to encompass the entire Black experience. And we see that to be a lot deeper than it's been previously defined. You know, this film showed that it had so much diversity to it. And I hope over time we start to find that unity and acceptance of that diversity.
Awesome. And I hope we both experience it, we seek it out. I think a call to action at the very minimum is to support our local Black artists, support our local Black institutions. When we're talking about the celebration of music and the celebration of culture through this amazing film, I think in part of that celebration, it's participation in it. And so I would implore everyone to, especially in this time post-COVID, if you can do it in a safe way, go out and see music. Go out and be a part of the culture that exists in the city. Go out and sort of hear and discover things that may be outside of your, maybe in an extreme way, your comfort zone, in a non-extreme way, the things that you're typically listening to. And then give it a chance, give it a listen. And that is, and if that opens your mind to other possibilities of your own agency and your activism within the community, run with that, because those beginnings can only lead to greater conversations and greater connections as we move forward as a culture in this city, in this nation. Thank you. I want to thank the guests for the conversation, for sharing your thoughts, your insights, your experiences with this amazing movie that moved all of us. I want to thank the committee that put this on. I want to thank the attendees for being patient and attending. I'm sorry that we couldn't get through all of the chat, but we got through some, and I thank you, Kick, for bringing that in. Christian or Laura, do you guys want to say anything to close, because you are the host and the institutional leads of this, and I thank you for letting us run with this.
Yes, thank you all for being here. We will send out a follow-up email to all attendees with information with the bios on all of our participants, and so we can have contact information and just take this further so everybody can learn more. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you, man.
and good night.
All right.
See you, everyone.
See ya.